Biblical archaeology. What do we have to say about biblical archaeology? Well, first of all, a lot of people will look at this biblical archaeology and they'll say, well, what this is doing is it's saving the Bible because it's showing that, all these events took place. Really? Now, let me just show you a couple of books on this subject. This book, very famous book, No Kingdom of David and Solomon. That's what it can come. That's the conclusion that this comes to. This book tried to save David and Solomon, but it's by the same authors. But it shows that they were local things. No, it does not save anything. So this video is going to be a bit different. I'm going to be showing you what you can look up on Wikipedia. We're going to be going through some of the most significant of these biblical finds. So, before we do that, let me just say something right here. The Middle East is where they're looking for a lot of these things. Why? Well, because that's where Israel and Judah were. How do you know? Did you ever think of that? What's called Israel? Since 1948. Well, the Palestine, Syria, Jordan, Ammon. What about before 1800? You see, I can look at old maps. Here's one here. There's nothing here. There's a big empire up here. We all know about that one. Absolutely nothing here. There's an Ionia. That sounds like Judah. That's interesting. But there's nothing here. There's absolutely nothing here. There's a few cities over in northern Iraq, like Mosul. But there's nothing there. There's no... And if you go to Arabic maps that center on that area, they call Jerusalem Al-Qib. It's a small town. You got pictures in the 19th century, only 150 years ago. Century and early 20th, if they started saying, okay, well, this is Jerusalem, and that must be Hebron, and that must be Bethel, and that must be Medigo, and they started doing this. Late 19th century onward. So that leaves the question, are you sure that that land in the Middle East is ancient Israel and Judah? Because if it is, then we have very little evidence of anything. But if it's not, then we have a lot of evidence in other places. That's the whole point of my series, which we'll be doing soon. But for this next section, we're going to be looking at a couple of these archaeological finds. They're going to show that they're not what people think they are. Some of them are just fakes and forgeries, but other ones are legitimate, and we should look at them. But we should see if they actually say what we think they say. By the way, 99% of these do not point in a single direction. They do not say, oh, David, he ruled down there in the Middle East. They don't say that. So that's the sort of thing we're about to see. Okay, let's go. Well, so biblical archaeology. Now, many people think that it supports the Bible, but in the matter of fact, it's the Bible's false friend. Now, methodological premise. This is my work, my research here. The geologic faculty of traditional archaeology, mainstream Galagerian archaeology, suffers from a fundamental circular logic. When an ancient stele, tablet, or monument is excavated, scholars retroactively apply Levant-centric geographical lens to arbitrary phonetic names. Under the chronology framework, they are part of the official administrated libraries, archives, and treaties of the medieval Ottoman Tatar horde. So I'll show you how this works. So here's the Meneptah stele. This is a famous inscription on Egypt. I'll get to that in a minute. But Supposedly it mentions the Bronze Age Israel in the southern Levant. It does no such thing. The term Israel, or the God Fighters, is what it means, applied to macro-geographically Euro-Asian Empire, of which the Syrian, Armenian, Balkan borderlands were an administrative part. And as you point out, the other places that it mentions are all in that region, although people try and pin the tail on the Bible by putting them elsewhere. The Kerr monoliths, again, they mentioned the Battle of Qatar. Shalmaneser is the chronological duplicate of Suleiman. It's the same name. Ahab is the common regional name of the hordes. The so-called black obelisk of, again, Shalmaneser, talked about Jehu, king of Samaria, bowing to offer tribute to Assyria. Well, again, there's nothing here that says, oh, this happened in the Levant. No, it maps onto the Crimea Black Sea basin and depicts a local Gothic, Slavic, or Crimean prince, and in fact, it is Crimean, paying tribute to the Horde central apparatus. Some of the other ones want to mention Judah. If it's genuine, it applies to Ionia Mount Ida. Judah. We're not going to do the latest release, so I'll do them again in a second. The Sennacherib Annals describe the siege of Jerusalem under King Hezekiah. Well, Hezekiah is a common name of the mayors and princes of Istanbul, Moscow. By the way, cuneiform flamenco is identified as Proto-Slavonic, so that doesn't help much. The Nebuchadnezzar Chronicle. Nebuchadnezzar was the liturgical name of Caesar Ivan the Terrible, and the events it describes all take place at that time. The cylinder of the Caesar Rus, Cyrus. It actually, what it talks about is the 17th century restoration and pacification campaigns of Caesar Michael. So that's the first one, but let me just run through these ones quickly. The Mesa Steel is complete forgery fabrication. I'll put a link in the video description of why that is. The Chaldean Steel mentioned Beth Dawud, the house of David. Well, that's interesting because it was found up up near Syria, right next to Georgia, where we actually find that there is a King David. So that certainly doesn't help. Well, it helped identify there was a David, but it doesn't help your Middle Eastern, Scalagerian idea. Balaam mentioned, okay, he's historical, but Balaam is a legendary spiritual figure in Anatolia and Russia. We already have inscriptions about this guy once you put him in the right place and the right time. Most of the clay beelers have been found to be forgeries. The scrolls found in the liturgy of for number 6, that doesn't prove anything. The Lakis letters, carbon ink on pottery. You think that's real? I don't think so. The Elephantine papyri in Egypt. Well, here's the thing about Egyptian finds. Flamenco pointed out something very important, that Egypt is actually the burial site of the Horde kings. What that means is that all these so-called Egyptian inscriptions, what they are is just records going back and forth, and that's what the Elephantine papyri are, just records going back and forth. The Ark of Titus, I'll do the first one, supposedly depicts the 70 AD sack of Jerusalem. It was completely reworked, whatever it looked like before, completely reworked in the 1820s, so we got nothing there that's valid. So biblical archaeology often just supports new chronology, and really it doesn't support the Bible. Well, what do you think? Are you sure about that Middle East again? No. That is a theme park, is what it is. The actual events took place in a much different set of regions. If it might interest you to know that I identified at the beginning of the video when we were looking at the globe. I said there's a place here called Ionia, which if you translate into Arabic and you take the word Judah into Arabic, they're almost the same name. Now some people are screaming, well, I think it's in Utah. We'll talk about that, don't worry. We'll get there. There's a place called Samaria in southern Hungary. And there's a place called Galicia up in the land of the Cossacks. near Poland and Lithuania and Western Russia, Tataria essentially. This is going to lead to an interesting geographical problem. When we're going to get to that, my next video is going to deal with Christ, and it's going to be a several part series. And I think that this one series on Christ is going to blow everybody's mind away. So we're going to take you back what in today's Galilean history would be about 900 years ago. 800 to 900 years ago. I'm going to take you back to Ionia, to Judah, and we're going to show you that where Jesus actually lived, and when he lived, and what they called him. And the one chronicle that we do have that's heavily edited, we're going to be going through that. And I don't think anybody else has ever actually done that, other than flamenco to some degree, but we're going to be doing it even more so. Thank you.